session. And if you can hear me, please let me know in our chat box. Okay. Um, yeah. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. It depends on where you just joined our first virtual Tableau user group of Berlin. My name is Diliana Bossens, and I'm co-host of Berlin Tableau user group together with Ingo and Gohar. Ingo is unfortunately not with us today, but Gohar will support me. So today we have two interesting topics. The first one is about risk and reward in public visualization, and the second talk is all about the design of dashboards. If you have any questions to our speakers, feel free to post them in the chat window, and we will have a Q&A round after every talk, so we can go through all your questions. And this session has been recorded. The session of Lindsay will be recorded, but the session of Judit will be not recorded. So if you are a live guest, the content of Judit will be exclusive for you only. So for all of you who are registered to this event, you will find the recording session on the YouTube channel of Tableau user group. So just visit it in the next day and you will find the recording of the session. So let's get it started by the first speaker. And she is one of the women in Tableau community, which I really admire, and I have a lot of respect. She's a senior consultant and health data viz, Tableau Zen Master, Tableau Public Ambassador, and founder of amazing project Health Viz, Lindsay Betzendahl. So Lindsay, I am passing to you.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much. If I can. Okay, does that look good? Work?
Looks great.
Okay, thank you, because I can't see the chat stuff while I have this dual screen thing going on. Okay, thanks so much. I'm very excited to be talking this evening to you folks on the risks and rewards of public visualization. We'll talk about some data pitfalls, how to get feedback, and finding your purpose in the public space. Okay, we all have to start with who am I? So I'm Lindsay Betzendahl, and I only spell that out because some folks around the world have difficulty pronouncing my last name, but hopefully the folks in Berlin, this is pretty common. I do hear there are some Betzendahls who live in Germany and in Berlin, so I would love to visit sometime. I'm actually the last Betzendahls in the United States, so my kids are the last ones. I live in Pennsylvania, a little outside of Philadelphia. I enjoy hiking and snowboarding in Vermont when I can get up there. And I certainly enjoy a good craft beer. Some of my hobbies. As Diliana mentioned, I'm a recent Tableau Zen Master, Public Ambassador. I've been using Tableau for quite some time now, but didn't get into using Tableau Public until a little later in my Tableau career. And I'm a consultant at a small data visualization company who works specifically with healthcare organizations. I've been in healthcare for about 15 years, I worked actually as a behavioral health clinician for children and their families for a number of years before getting into managed care. I run Project HealthViz, which is a community-driven monthly data visualization project aimed at telling the stories of our health and bringing awareness to healthcare topics. I kind of think I'm a spontaneous wild card at times. While I'm a little ADHD and a bit OCD, you'd think I'd be very structured and organized, which I am, but sometimes I'm a little crazy as well. There is a story of me jumping out of a car at a Tableau conference because mid-drive back to the hotel, I decided I wanted to stay out. So there you have it. So that's me in a nutshell. So as I mentioned, I've been sharing my visualizations publicly since about 2016-ish, and they span many topics. At the current moment, I have over 140 visualizations. Some are healthcare related, some are things like my son's clothing colors and some quantified minimalism, cheetahs, but other things like hospitals, pregnancy, drug deaths, vaccinations, etc. So I've always strongly believed that bringing awareness and visualizing these topics helps to reduce stigma and ensure that conversations continue to happen about these topics. I think the worst thing that can happen in our world is when there's an issue and people pretend it doesn't exist by not talking about it. So for example, mental illness, which is very close to my heart, having done that work for many years, the more that we talk about mental illnesses and they become more accepted, and the more likely people get help. But there's a big difference between when we visualize in our business space versus when we visualize in the public realm. So let's just consider in the business world, often, hopefully, you are creating a dashboard that you've gotten feedback on, you've made iterations on based on your stakeholders' needs. There's been a level of quality checking and data integrity with the team that you work on that's producing the data. You're likely trying to meet certain requirements in your visualization for that target user. All of these things happen before you release it, right? Someone eventually signs off on the visualization, said, yep, this is good to go. We can send it out to our stakeholders. In the public world, this is very different, especially when you're doing something more personal and you're putting something out there because you've done it. And you can release that whenever you want. You can make your own design choices. And interestingly, your audience, while you could say, I've done this for myself, or it's for a particular group, ends up being for anyone and everyone, since anyone can access that visualization. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is a choice that I made to viz or not to viz coronavirus. And I recently had a visualization about this, and as we all know and are currently living, a number of months ago, right, coronavirus became a very hot topic, obviously, and there's a lot of data visualization starting to come out about it. Before it really hit the United States, I had made coronavirus a topic for Project HealthViz back on March 1st. I had known about the Johns Hopkins data set and decided that that would be a good, very robust data set. However, what happened very shortly thereafter was a lot of discussions in the data visualization community about if we should be visualizing this data, that this was a global pandemic and there were a lot of risks and rewards to doing it. And so I thought, okay, what would be the risk or reward for me to use this data and visualize it? Like I said, there was a lot of discussion saying you shouldn't do it if you're not an epidemiologist, if this is a sensitive topic, people are going to misinterpret it, etc. And I wasn't really convinced that I should just listen to that. I wanted to make this choice. So like I said, I considered a number of different things related to this data. It's a sensitive subject. How can I mitigate that? There was a lot of uncertainty in the world about the data, how it was being collected, what was going to happen. The data accuracy was a concern. Different countries and organizations were capturing the data. How could we ensure that that was captured in the same way or the same methodology? We were also living in a circumstance where the data was being collected right before our eyes in real time. And so things were always changing. And then that came the question of what do we know and what don't we know about this data? What is missing? What is my professional knowledge? How much do I really know about viruses and pandemics? Probably not a lot. And there were a lot of different opinions about what the data meant and how we should respond to it. So as someone in this space, I chose to visit this. It was important to me, my family, my neighbors, and I decided I want to understand the pandemic locally and really understand my risk. So I took an approach to think about how is this data relevant to me, and that was going to be my focus. I wanted to gain an accurate understanding of the information so that I could be better poised to know when things were slowing down. But also, I did this because I felt it was really important for me to be able to be in touch with the data and not pretend like this stuff wasn't happening. So let's talk about from risk to reward and how there are some common pitfalls that we may run into when we're visualizing something that will be consumed by anyone in the public space. So the first is dirty data. Oops, cute little boy. So dirty data, we all, business or otherwise in the public realm, come across data that isn't always perfect. So the issue with the COVID-19 data was how there was a number of different issues with how people were different countries and states and organizations were tracking the data, understanding if there was different methodology, being very clear on what confirmed versus actual or suspected cases meant. I noticed in some of the data there were changes in these running sum values, meaning one day there were 15 cases, the next day that running sum was 13, and the next day it was 10 and then 15. And so things didn't always make sense. So I knew that there was issues. And again, there was some dependency on global consistency or even regional and how things were being tracked. So being aware of the data is really important when you're visualizing publicly. So here's an example of even the local data in Pennsylvania that I was using directly from the Department of Health had inconsistencies. This is the cases on March 22nd, and if we look at Franklin, it said there the first column was cases, confirmed cases, and the 10 is the number of deaths. The next day, it says 151 cases and only 1 death. So suddenly 9 people came back from the dead, apparently. I'm not exactly sure, but they obviously, there are issues with the data. And I found this in the Johns Hopkins data as well when I was combing through it to use that for the Project Health Biz data. So what do we do about this? Right? This is always an issue, and you always want to consider the data that you have and the potential issues with it. So obviously review and explore your data as best you can to see where there may be some issues. We try to clean it when we can, but sometimes we have to live with some margin of error. And in this particular type of data, I had to realize we were just in unprecedented times. Like sometimes there were people who were trying to enter this data in as fast as they could every day, and there are going to be mistakes made, and things will probably clear up in the future when we look back on this data and kind of understand what's going on. So here you'll see in that bottom graph in my visualization, there's a negative number because there was that day that we lost cases. And then it went back up. I didn't change the data. So I ended up deciding to make a notation that said negative values are an accurate reflection of the Department of Health data, which may have its own errors. But I didn't want people to think that there was a mistake in the analysis versus, we just have to live with some of these nuances. So the second pitfall that happens in public visualization is assuming that the data we're given equals the reality of what is happening. Since the COVID data is being collected in real time, it feels like it's the reality, but there's a lot of things that we just don't know about. We only understand what's reported versus the suspected versus the actual. We have to understand and accept that we don't have the full reality. Also, there's plenty of discussions about how testing availability and access is going to directly impact the number of cases that have the potential to be tested and therefore confirmed. So I know people personally who had likely had the virus and never got tested or had any kind of medical attention to say it was or wasn't. So they're not collected at all, right? So we know we're missing things. Also deaths by COVID-19 versus deaths with COVID-19. There's been discussions about how are we quantifying the death count. So all of these things are really worth considering. And so I had to consider these when I was going to visualize this data is how much is this reality or not? And how can I explain that in my visualization to make sure that that's clear or clear enough? So I did some research to look into Pennsylvania's data before I visualized as well as the United States. So I have this on the side panel that lists the number of confirmed cases. So I looked, so Pennsylvania does confirmed and probable cases in their account. And I was like, well, what is probable? How does one define that? I didn't even know. But I guess there is a national definition or perhaps a worldwide definition about what probable is. And this is the definition. It's actually 3 different criterias or possible ways in which that you would be classified as a probable case. And so I put that into my visualization to make sure that it's clear that it includes that probable and confirmed cases. The data set itself just says cases, and so without knowing exactly what that was, there would be some inconsistency in that. So I wanted to be clear on what it was. So again, some of the solutions for the data equals reality pitfall is to try your best to always understand the methodology behind any data that you're visualizing publicly. Make sure you understand what isn't being captured. So again, reported cases is different than actual cases, and we want to make sure that we understand that there are things that are not always captured in data that we're using. It's great to add footnotes to indicate exact definitions or have some other information so that people can access and understand what you're showing. And always notate where data is sourced from if it's sourced from different places. So, for example, I was using case rates, which I needed the population of every county in Pennsylvania. And I was using population counts, which we all know is an estimate anyhow, from 2019, because that's the most recent census information. And so that's important to know because even that can pose changes to what is real, right? So I'm using 2019 population, but literally live 2020 COVID-19 data. And so there could be differences. I mean, I'm not sure how many people are moving between counties, but you don't know, right? So I had to be clear on the population versus the data timeframe. So pitfall number 3 is how we compare data. And this is a big topic for the COVID-19 data because there were many different ways people were showing this information. We could do cases versus case rate, deaths versus deaths above the normal deaths, rolling averages to smooth out some of the bumps in the information. I'm sure many folks have seen the days since 100th case kind of projections, logarithmic versus linear scales, how many days to double. And so you can just see, here is an example of just confirmed cases, deaths, and recoveries by just counts. Well, this may look, without understanding, startling, like North America has a bunch more, but North America has more people than, say, Europe. Or, right, we don't have the actual population for rate, so some of these numbers may make the information look worse or less worse than it actually is. There's also, here's one about the global deaths and how compared to other deaths at the same time. I find these kind of interesting because this is only a partial part of the year, and so these other global deaths are for a longer period of time. We've also seen these, number of days since recording. So, right, there's so many different ways to be looking at the same information and what different outcomes and results we think about after we're seeing these. Here's incident rates versus just case counts, so we can see the case rates. So what are some of the solutions? So I tried to take an easy approach to my visualization. I had, as I mentioned earlier, a use case that I wanted to do this for my state to really understand and be able to share information with my family and with my friends about what was going on in the county that I live in. And so it's actually very helpful because my state, in a large sense, is not that bad, right? So confirmed cases, some counties only have one person, a handful of people ever since this all started. And then I have cases per 100,000 to make sure that we are normalizing that against the population in the county. And that is a really important thing for anything regarding these type of mapping, is to make sure that we have rates. Because obviously we would expect a place like Philadelphia, which is down in that bottom right corner in dark purple on the left chart, we would expect that they would have a high number of cases because there's a lot more people living there. And once we normalize that, we see that while their rate is still high, there's a number of other counties closer to the border, which is close to New Jersey, that have a similar case rate, even though their case counts are lower. So really being clear about how we compare data in an accurate way is really important for visualizing data in the public space. Okay, so now we've talked about some of those pitfalls. So let's assume that we've considered all of those. Now what's next? So my recommendation is to obtain feedback. And I think many of us do. I always try to obtain feedback for many of my visualizations. I can't claim to all of them. But for this particular one, I knew that this was already a sensitive subject. There were some people who were saying the stakes were too high to ever communicate about this information. We being the data visualization folks shouldn't do this publicly. There was others that said, do it. Even if you're not an epidemiologist, get out there, build stuff, and you'll learn, right? You'll learn about this information. Others were saying there may be a middle ground for this, that we can appreciate your actual level of expertise, but beware of the sensitivity to the impact of others. So there was a lot of these discussions. And so I originally had said, I don't think people should be afraid to visualize this information. And I stand by that for both this and anything else. But I think visualizing publicly is a very powerful opportunity to learn about data, to learn how to explore it, and to gain feedback from people so that you learn more about the topic and how to do it well. Right? There can be mistakes, but gaining feedback from other people can be very powerful. So I actually ended up having a call. You can see this on YouTube. It's on my YouTube channel. Jonathan Drummy, Den Master Hall of Fame, and myself had a conversation after this to kind of discuss what was our responsibility to visualize or not this information, and how could we support and provide that support and feedback to other individuals who wanted to visualize the COVID-19 data. And so we did that. So I had a conversation with someone. We both might have had slightly different perspectives on it, but it was eye-opening to have that. And having conversations is extremely important when visualizing publicly. So obtaining feedback, aside from just having conversations, general conversations, we can also be very clear in talking to people about what kind of feedback we're looking for. So reaching out to other friends in the field, other experts, and asking specifically if you want to have, excuse me, what's going on here? I'm sorry, something's going on. To be clear what sort of feedback you're looking for: design, methodology, analysis, storytelling, etc. And to seek out feedback from those that you trust and respect. Ask them just to look over your visualization. Does it make sense? Is there anything I'm missing? Should I be more clear about this? Did I totally miss the mark? And so that was really important for me for this particular data set, because I knew that there were folks out there who were more intelligent than I on the topic of epidemiology and how to visualize this information in a both meaningful and appropriate, respectful way. So it's helpful to just get a pulse on how people may react or respond to your viz when you release it publicly. Again, it's similar to what you would do in the business space, except for you're not confined by that, or you have to do it. So I think it's a recommendation that folks should take too. Okay, so implementing that feedback. So I asked for feedback from somebody, and there were a couple of things that they had said to me about being transparent about where the county data was from related to the population, which I hadn't put any information in, and adding a disclaimer somewhere about the intentions and who the audience for the dashboard is for. And so those are two recommendations that somebody I trusted made. And so I did. I added that in. And so I made sure that I had a disclaimer about this. I know it's sort of tucked away, but it is there to speak about that this is meant for my personal use, and information about the data and how I'm collecting the information, and what you should do if you think you have COVID-19. I don't want this to be any kind of medical recommendation or anything like that, as well as the exact sources for where I got the data. And so the last part is finding that purpose. And that's really the key thing from visualizing publicly, is feeling that satisfaction, an important piece internally that you feel for producing this work, and whatever that may be for you. So the finding purpose for me, as I sort of mentioned from the beginning, my purpose was to tell the stories of our health. And that is, for a lot of my visualizations, that's my purpose. And that still was for this one as well. I always, for any viz I do, the other is to find enjoyment in just being creative, right? That is very fulfilling. And so for the COVID-19 data set, my purpose became both of these, plus to be able to more accurately understand what's happening to me locally. I think it was a little overwhelming to continue to see information worldwide, or even for the US. It was hard for me to get my head around, how does that matter to me? What's going on in my neighborhood? And this helped me keep a better pulse on that. And I felt a lot better and less anxious once I was able to understand it. And I also wanted to be able to tell my friends and family the known details about, and how to hopefully reduce their panic by saying, like, this is when things are getting better, and this is how things are trending, this is who might be at risk, et cetera, like that. So what ended up happening of all of this is that from Project Health Viz, there was a lot of other folks that made some wonderful visualizations, and I think learned a lot from taking that risk to visualize a sensitive topic. People asked a lot of questions, wanted to make sure they were doing this respectfully and honestly, as Anna says, right? So people are learning from this. Here's another one. Really wanted to do a responsible viz for this, which I think was very rewarding for me, that folks took the opportunity to challenge themselves to visualize something, knowing that there could be risk of people saying, you did this wrong and this isn't right, or what have you. But the reward was these folks wanted to share this information, and were able to get feedback, and were able to eventually show their analytic and designs for a topic that I think they're going to be appreciative that they were able to do. And lastly, in the end, Tableau put together their entire big list of a small subset of all the COVID-19 visualizations that are out there. So at the time that I snipped this, which was probably yesterday, it was almost 16,000 visualizations. So people are visualizing this information, people want to know it, and people want to share it. And so the reward here is that Tableau also respected and understood that there's a need to share this information. People are going to seek it out anyway. And so they've put together a fantastic collection of some of these visualizations that anyone obviously can access. And that was very rewarding to me, from the beginning of the month to feeling very hesitant to even attempt to visualize the COVID-19 data. So by the end of the month, this being much more accepted, people were learning, people were collaborating, people were getting feedback, and people were sharing their stories. And I think that was a powerful turn of events that I'm glad happened, because I was worried that people would be shied away from sharing their knowledge. And that's it. Thank you so much for letting me share this information. If you want, you can find me at Data is my website, Betzendahl Data on Twitter, and of course, I'm on Tableau Public. So thank you. I guess I could pass it back over to Juliana.
Yes, thank you so much, Lindsay. It is amazing talk and very important topic, and yeah, great annotation to all relevant points in data visualization. And I think it is really important to ask for the feedback, especially if we work with such data like COVID-19.
Right.
Here is the feedback of expert is a very relevant, because not every dashboard designer is an expert of such data. And maybe we dashboard designer, we see the data like numbers, but we should also be aware that it is not only numbers, it is lives, it is number of fatalities.
Exactly.
Fatalities of families, friends, and so on. And it is a very sensitive topic.
Exactly.
Yes, so.
And I would say, working in healthcare, I come across that a lot. Obviously, everything I'm doing, are people versus something else like a transaction, like retail, perhaps. But so while I may be well aware of that, I know a lot of people don't work in that space all the time. I recall not too long ago, there was a Makeover Monday data set about suicide, and it became a very difficult topic. And I think some people were thinking about it like numbers and putting it out there. And there was a lot of discussion about how to be responsible when visualizing some topics such as that. But it was a good conversation about how, with any data set, particularly healthcare, that it is really important to get that feedback, to think about your data, think about how it's going to be interpreted. And if you don't know, to try to find some experts in the space to say, hey, have I done this right? Am I missing something that would be glaring to somebody in the healthcare space? Because you want to do right by your data, right? We are visualizing publicly because we're proud of something we've come up with, our design and our analysis. And certainly nobody wants to visualize something and then it have some repercussions that are unintended. So I think in order to minimize that, having those conversations, again, even if it's not an expert, I mean, like I said, I didn't know any personal epidemiologists or doctors or anything, but I got as close as I could with people who had some good knowledge. And so even if it's just, other friends in the space, getting someone to have another critical eye, I think is always helpful, no matter what you're visualizing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me check our chat box if we have any questions. And
Doug has.
Thanks a lot, Lindsay, for talking about this very important and difficult topic. So I would ask the participants to ask their questions in the Q&A box. If you have any questions, just write there, and Lindsay will answer. And in the meantime, I have a question to you. So you mentioned that there are many risks in visualizing this sensitive topic, and many people actually try to go even a step forward, and they are doing forecasting. And I would like to know, what do you think about this?
About forecasting?
Yes.
So it's funny because I personally try to avoid forecasting, but that's because I'm not as good or familiar with the models that forecasting uses. And so forecasting, one of the challenges is that they're only good as the model that's created and what you put into the model. And so when you're working with data, particularly that's changing from day to day, and so what you're putting into your model, like, so for the COVID-19, I've seen projections, and every day they're putting new data in and new elements to that model, and then the projection changes, right? So real-time projections are they're tough. I think and people get concerned when the projection changes or the analysis, the result changes, and that's because we're living with data that's impacting the models. And so I don't do them only because I think they bring about, they're uncertain as they are. Obviously, they're, you know, an estimation of a potential, but they can be good for understanding kind of the trajectories of data. I think they just comes with a lot of understanding that they aren't perfect. It's kind of like hurricane projections, right? Like the model says it's going to go this way, but the range of uncertainty is like hundreds of miles wide on either side, and sometimes the hurricane goes onto land and sometimes it goes off to sea and the projection didn't know it. So like it's sort of like that, where I think they're good for making sure people are thinking about what's possible, but we have to realize that that's all they are, is kind of an estimate and a guess based on the best model that we have.
Okay, thank you. We don't have more questions for the moment.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I would like to use this moment, and I want to thank everybody out there who has been working on the front 24/7 in such tough times. Thank you for all your expertise, for your love, your care, your humanity. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Lindsay, for your presentation. And
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. Thank you so much. Bye. So, and we go further to our second speaker. It is, It is Judit Bekker. She is data visualization expert in Star Schema Ltd. And Tableau Future author. She is very, very talented in design dashboards, and her design talent inspired already the whole Tableau community. And if you check your Tableau profile, you will find a lot of dashboards with very interesting topics and eye-catching design. And I'm so excited about your topic, Judit, so pass to you.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words, Ilyana.
And go to our final point. We don't have any questions, right?
No questions. No questions for the moment, but you can still write in the chat Q&A section. Judith would probably answer to those also later. But thank you very much, Judith. At the end, your ugliest presentation of all time was really great. So thanks for that.
Thank you too for having me.
Bye. So, so guys, if you want to contact us, just follow us on Twitter. You can find us with this Twitter name, BerlinTOG. You can also reach us per email, berlintableauusergroup@gmail.com. Just send us an email, say, what do you think about our Tableau user group? And we are always open for feedback, and we are always give our best. So, from my side, I just want to say, stay positive in these tough times, stay safety, and let's try to do our best and help each other where we can. So thank you so much to everyone, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.